Welcome, listeners, to this episode of the Justice Team Podcast. It's part of the Justice Team Network. Go to justiceteamnetwork.com if you have any questions. Today, we are honored to have on two former prosecutors who work together, putting bad guys in jail, prison, lock them up. And they're going to talk to us today about not only their experience and getting trial experience there, but how they've transitioning into doing civil law. I've had the honor to try some cases with the guest immediately to my right, Siannah Collado.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
And we also have on RJ Dreiling.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thank you for having me.
So first, I want you guys to just introduce yourselves, where you're practicing now, where you are in your career, and then we'll talk about, we'll rewind time after that.
Okay. I'm Siannah. I have my own firm now, SC Law. It is basically based out of JHQ here in Torrance, but I go everywhere to Mom in San Francisco. And I predominantly do trials. So other firms bring me in for trials right before expert designations. Gary Doherty likes to call me a gunslinger for hire.
Gunslinger for hire, like a mercenary. How do you say mercenary in Spanish? Is there like a word? Oh, let's go. Como no? Como no? RJ, how about you?
My name's RJ Dreiling. I just started Dreiling Law about a month ago. Thank you. I was with the DA's office for 15 years. Now I'm on the other side doing criminal defense. One of the reasons I decided to stay in this area is I love criminal law. You know, as Siannah knows, it's very informal, it's very fast-paced, it's very dynamic, and I think most people would tell you it's more like Night Court than Law and Order, more comedy than drama. But I love it. You know, it's a
quick hit. Who was the bailiff in Night Court?
Bull.
That's right. Play by.
Oh, God, dude.
It was Richard Mole. Richard Mole, maybe.
Yeah.
Dan Larroquette was in that one.
That's right. And there was a reboot. Did you see it?
No.
Yeah. John Larroquette's still in it.
Really?
And I think it's Harry's daughter is a judge now or something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a flashback.
Yeah. But yeah, I love it. And it's been, about on my own for about a month now. It's going well so far. So I'm kind of looking forward to making use of Justice HQ.
Yeah, and if you have a dead body in your trunk, go to RJ. He'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you're not concealing something. Okay, cool. So, all right, we're going to start with you, Siannah. So how many years were you a prosecutor?
9.
9 years. And what kind of crimes were you prosecuting?
Well, initially we all start with like misdemeanors and felonies, like bread and butter. But then I got into the special victims unit that we call VIP, Victim Impact Program. And that's like domestic violence cases, sexual assault, child abuse. I did that for a number of years, and then eventually, after doing my juvenile rotation, I went to Compton where I met this guy, and did a lot of like gang-related cases, not in the hardcore unit, but like gang stuff, and that did my last.
So whatever you're doing, when you're dealing with the gangs and stuff, did you ever fear for your safety? I think we talk like how I've heard you tell the story of how you've been courteous to even the defendants.
Yeah. I had a case where it was a pro per right when I got there with Bacigalupo, and Chris gave me this case like 8 of 10, and he was a defendant pro per, which like y'all dread. You don't ever have.
Yeah, that means that he's representing himself, the defendant.
Right.
What crime was he charged with?
He was charged with shooting from a car, running a Resberg, and running away from the cops. So a number of things, looking at 24 years or something like that. But I offered him close. And because he was in his county booze before the jury walked in, and he later wrote me a love letter, which I'm happy to share with you guys. But the point of it was...
You married him? Is that right?
Hey, he's got 2 more years, all right? The jury's still out. But it was just showing kindness and respect, and I think he appreciated the fact that I didn't max him out despite, having the ability.
Yeah, and talking about killing with kindness, if you've ever seen or want to learn from Siannah, I've had the pleasure of doing trials with her to watch her eviscerate experts in civil cases, killing with kindness. So once it was a psychiatrist, and as she was tearing him up, his phone rang. What was the song? It was Dame
de Cosita, which is so inappropriate.
Yeah. I wonder whose ringtone that was. That was very weird for him to have that on his phone. But yes,
side piece maybe. I don't know.
So you transitioned about 2018, 19?
2016, the year Desi was born. Yeah. So like 2 months after she was born, you're like, come and try a case with me.
Yeah, why not? Why not? So what are the differences for, we maybe have a lot of law students listening or people that want to get access to trials. Why the decision for the two of you, I'll start with you, RJ, to come out of law school and choose this route?
I remember in my trial ad class, there was a kind of an open, someone put in someone asked the professor to let us know if anyone was interested in clerking for the DA's office. And I remember the professor telling us, like, look, if you want to be in court, and that's your thing, public defender's office or the DA's office is the way to go. And I remember, I told the story recently. I remember the first day walking actually into the Torrance Courthouse is where I clerked, and walking into the DA's office, and it was like dingy and dirty. And they had like, those like,
changed.
Yeah, those inspirational posters with like the one word and a guy like diving off a cliff, like someone had like gotten out of their garage, and they had put them up all over the walls and stuff. And it's 2 people to an office, so it was just very kind of, I guess, informal and kind of, I don't want to say rough, but it was, it was just, everyone seemed very focused on in the work they're doing and enjoying the work they were doing, and that was what kind of appealed to me. And then you go in court, and everyone's generally pretty collegial in court and gets along. And then, Siannah, I know when you start off in the DA's office, you can do 2 trials a month, 3 trials a month on misdemeanors.
Oh, yeah.
It could literally be, because of the volume of cases we're dealing with, and particularly in misdemeanors. I mean, I've had a case where I walk into work at 9 a.m. and my boss is like, hey, we got a jury walking in 30 minutes on a felony gun case. Can you go try it?
That was my first trial. It was like I was doing a calendar and like, can you go pick a jury? I'm like, yeah, sure. When now they're walking in, I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah. So that part of it was,
and that's the difference. So I mean, educate our listeners. What's the difference between the biggest difference for you, Siannah, between criminal case and civil case?
Trying it or being
Either.
Okay, I say for us in criminal, you're always trying to convict someone. So it's the same. For like civil, the transition would be like the liability. I could do that all day. I can say that the person's liable because of X, Y, and Z, right? But the hard part for me transitioning was asking for the money because we don't ask for the damages. So that was a little bit difficult. The other thing is in criminal, you're used to shooting from the hip and kind of getting up there and asking questions because there's no deposition.
Yeah, there's no discovery. There's no expert discovery.
For the most part, right? Yeah. Unless you have like some DNA challenging or whatever, or psych defense. But in civil, you have volumes of depositions, so I feel like that's the difference. You kind of know what they're going to say, whereas criminal, we're used to kind of just figuring it out on the stand.
Yeah, do you think that you're better at improvising because of the skill set that you were given in the DA's office in trial?
Absolutely. I was telling RJ the story about the case you and I tried, Godinez, and they teach us never to ask the question you don't know the answer to. But we had an expert, and she had been hired by us previously as voc rehab and life care planner. And in our case, the trial, the defense hired her for life care planning, but not voc rehab. Their voc rehab said no disability. I got up there and I was like, Dr. So-and-so, Dr. So-and-so. And I asked her, do you think she has a disability?
And I remember the defense was objecting to you asking that question to their own expert who's a specialist in that. It was funny.
Yeah, but it was a gutsy play on my part. I remember looking at you, I'm like, I'm going to go for it. Yeah. But I kind of felt that I needed to ask that question based on the vibe, right? And there are a few instances that only comes from experience, I think.
Yeah, and that was my experience too. It's sort of by necessity you learn to deal with thinking on your feet because so much of it just kind of happening, as a prosecutor or even as a defense attorney. The other side can present a witness that you didn't know about, whatever the case may be, and you can make your argument that it shouldn't be presented. But sometimes the judge is going to let it in. Yeah. And then so you got to deal with it, and I think over time we both did, a fair amount of trials. You kind of just learn to deal with it,
And being both working in Compton, I think the majority of our witnesses and victims were recanting. So you're used to getting a police report that says X, Y, and Z in DV cases. And
in what cases?
Domestic violence, sorry. Getting into the lingo because RJ's here. But then they show up to court and like, no, he didn't do anything to me. So you're having to impeach your own witnesses. Wow. And there's you're limited by the rules that apply to that. So I always expect people to lie to me on the stand. So I think that's a strength that we have as former prosecutors.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, and now, Siannah, the role that you're in now, you're not doing the discovery, the extent of the paper stuff. It is like kill assignments, the mercenary type stuff. What skills do you think, if our listeners do go follow the route that you two took, go to PD or DA's office and then transition to civil, what do you think has the most arrows in your quiver?
I think definitely just trying the cases, you get that fearlessness out there. Because, I feel like in civil, a lot of attorneys I've seen that are around our age have tried 1 or 2 cases, if at all.
If at all. And
we've been through, some really shitty cases, walk the dogs even in civil. And that confidence that you get in the courtroom is invaluable.
Yeah. And you're also in Abota, so congrats on that. That's a big time thing. And what is there a difference, RJ? Well, you haven't done a civil trial yet, right? So
I don't think he will. He's
well, like I said, there's a quick counter to Sienna's point, which is funny, which is sometimes in criminal, well, obviously in any area of law, but most crim judges are former public defenders or DAs. But then you have sometimes some civil attorneys, and sometimes you have some former U.S. attorneys or U.S. public defenders. And Sienna will tell you sometimes, because it's so informal, and I would just say this is something to think about if you're thinking about a career in criminal law. Every once in a while, you'll be arguing an issue in front of a judge who's a former U.S. attorney. And the judge will look at the two attorneys and be like, okay, why don't you guys go ahead and brief that for me and present tomorrow? And both the PD and the DA will look at each other and be like, are you kidding me right now?
It's like so basic. It's so basic.
Yeah, this is state court, dude. We just we go with the flow. So the downside, I think I don't even call it downside, but the aspect of it to worth remembering is that it's so informal and so dynamic and it's so fast paced. Sometimes the more complex, like written litigation type stuff, you don't get as much experience in. Whereas obviously in civil, I mean, that's the bread and butter. That's
paper to death.
I agree. That's the one thing where I feel like I don't like writing motions. You knew that from the moment you hired me. I was like, paper is not my thing. But I'll argue anything.
Yeah. I don't think I've written even a letter.
That's why Brandon was her favorite. That's and Shelby. And,
I let the writers write. I mean, they win on paper. We win with their mouth. Mm-hmm. Right. And the swag, the Sienna swag. So Sienna, for you, when you're trying a civil case, is there a difference between the judges in civil as opposed to criminal?
It just depends. Like I remember my first trial without you that I tried with Tom, we got sent to West Covina, and it was a former criminal judge. And the defense is being very condescending to her because she had no civil experience. Whereas she was sustaining and all my objections were overruling his because she knew evidence code real well. So I took advantage of that fact for us. But I
also find that the criminal lawyers know the evidence code far better than civil lawyers.
Yeah. Like you guys didn't really know Sanchez until like 2017.
I know.
I'm like, that's what.
It's the law. Yeah. Every objection is just nails. And I think that was the case where they were following the plaintiff, but it was his cousin. It was the wrong person.
Oh, yeah. That's the one where they had the sub rosa, which, by the way, I'll admit. So sub rosa in civil law is when they catch your plaintiff doing stuff they said they couldn't do, right? But when I switched over, I was like meeting with the boys and you guys were talking about a case and they have sub rosa and I'm like sub rosa, if I use my Latins, under the rose, like what are they talking about? I Google it and it's a BMX bike. And then I later I didn't want to act like a dumbass, and then I later find out that it's actually surveillance of your client. But I had to play I knew what I was talking about.
And both of you now you're also in the business of law. You own your own firms. So RJ, you're fresh out of the clink or whatever you want to call it.
Sure,
fresh out. Yeah. What's different? I mean, so for our listeners out there that want to go from public to private, what's that like?
I mean, I think Sienna would agree with this, even though she's been on her own for longer. I loved my time in the office. You meet so many good friends, and you get so much good experience, and there's all kinds of upside. But I just kind of reached a point in my life where I was like, okay, I think I want to try being on my own. And so far so good. It's nice, kind of just doing what you want to do during the day. Obviously, on what I'm discovering slowly is that on this end in criminal defense, you kind of have to be available at all hours of the day. When those phone calls come in, if you don't pick up the call, chances are, if they're in distress, they're going to be looking to talk to someone else. Okay. So that's what I'm finding out so far. We'll see how it goes. I'm fortunate that there's a handful of people who went from the DA's office of criminal defense that have been guiding me through this. Have been really nice. So, we'll see. Like I said before, I really enjoy criminal law, so I'm familiar with, the kind of pace and everything like that. So,
Does it also help you, since you have people on the other side of the table now where you used to be able to resolve cases, things like this?
I think what the upside would be is that I know, generally speaking, obviously haven't negotiated so many different cases over so many different years, that you kind of know what the perspective is that the DA is going to take on a case and things they want to hear and things they don't want to hear. So I think that's going to be useful, although I don't know, it's such a big office. I don't know the extent to which I'll be negotiating directly with someone that is a friend of mine or someone that I've worked with. But it's certainly, I think, is beneficial to know, as a DA, you get a lot of things, sometimes a defense attorney could tell you things that you're kind of just like, I don't really care, so I think anyone who was a prosecutor probably has a good idea of the stuff that's really going to resonate with them.
I gotta say though, you have an excellent reputation in the DA's office and the defense bar and the judicial bench. So having been out for about 6 years now, I go to criminal court on cases that are like, not criminal defense, but my case. And I feel like your relationships will definitely help you because they know that you're not going to misrepresent or be unethical or anything like that. So
yeah, and that is a big,
that.
We always, when we tried cases, Siannah and I in civil, we always let it be known that Siannah was a former prosecutor, and that would give a lot of credence from the judges. Like she'd be able to get away with more. Like we were trying a case in Torrance, remember this? And the judge was just shutting me down, which is very unlike. Like I usually get away with literal murder. Like we did another case in San Diego, and they went to bad faith, so we got the claims file. And in the writing, it actually says that Bob Simon's getting away with murder. I thought it was very funny. They're like, he does whatever he wants with this judge. But the judge wasn't having my shit. But she loved Siannah. So Siannah just took over the trial. And
yeah,
like,
I was going to do 2 witnesses.
Yep.
And you're like, Siannah, you're doing the plaintiff. I'm like, wait, what?
Oh, we just did a 180 at lunch. We're like, and it worked.
Yeah.
But I think that credence thing is a big deal.
The usual giveaway, and it's not intentional, but, we always say the people call.
Mm-hmm.
So, my first couple of trials, and it still happens, like the people call, and a couple of judges know, if you know, you're like a former DM. Like the plaintiff calls, I'm sorry, Your Honor. So that's been
So what's the, when do you think the learning curve, because I see a lot of, lawyers leaving public, either DA or public defender, and they want to go to trial work in civil. And a lot of times it's a harder transition than they had imagined. What do you think? Why do you think that's so?
I think because unlike what RJ was alluding to earlier about the relationships and the camaraderie you have in criminal, like you see the same players, everyone kind of talks, like you screw me over, I will let 1,000 other DAs know that you screwed me over, and like your reputation's done. In civil, I think people have the misconception that you're not going to see each other around, so they can be jerks to you on paper. And even in person, like the guy that was pointing his finger at my face and told me he was going to go nuclear on me for objecting to a continuance, he got his coming. But I think that's the difference, where people don't really think they're going to have that relationship again and can just be punks.
Yeah, a lot uncivility on the civil.
Civil's not so civil.
Ironically, yeah.
Civil's not so civil.
Yeah. And I also think that you have to use the skill sets that you've been given. I think a lot of firms make the misnomer that they're going to bring over a trial lawyer and have them do workout cases, do discovery, do expert discovery. And it's something that's harder. It's like learning a whole new practice of law.
And I'm sorry, I didn't really get to answer your question. I think my learning curve, I'll admit, I was like a new mom, switching over to civil. The first 6 months, I was like, what the hell did I do? I was like crushing at the D's office. I knew what I was doing, and I'm like, I was about to quit and tell you, Bob, this is a mistake. Like, I'll go back to the D's office. And it wasn't until like 6 months in where I had to do a treater depo of a neurosurgeon, where I was like, I found my groove. And the doctor even knew that I did, because I was like kind of doing my direct and kind of getting like, debunking their defenses. But it took me a while. I was like reading every book I could, going to
so
seminar.
what are those books and seminars that you leaned on to kind of?
Well, I started in October, so the first convention I went to was COC. I went to every possible workshop I could. I got the Keith Mitnick book, the Don't Eat the Bruises.
Got me a signed copy too, thank you.
Yeah, I flew to DC to see him. David Ball Damages. I didn't do the reptile book. I felt like that was just like not, it's not my thing. But yeah, whatever books I bought a whole bunch of like guides, like
trial guides books.
Yeah.
Polarizing the Case. Did you ever do that
got
one?
that one.
So there's a copy. I was in the Hermosa office yesterday, and I found one. It might be. It's all highlighted with tabs, and that seems like a total Siannah move.
Yeah.
So I found that it's on the conference room table in the Hermosa Beach office.
Sounds about right.
I was like, this is a good one. And how about you, RJ, when you went over to do your private, like you're starting your firm, like how did you learn to do that?
Like I said before, I was fortunate that there's probably 6 or 7 people I met with that have kind of done the same transition. And Siannah was someone I talked to, Josh Ritter, who I think you know.
Josh,
yeah, Josh was the one who referred me to you guys. So it was just really nice to sit down with people and they would say, because obviously you worry there's going to be an aspect of competition, right? Being criminal defense in the South Bay. it's not hundreds of lawyers, but everyone I talk to, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. So you develop a checklist, and you kind of get things going, and then one day you just gotta pull the trigger and go for it. So
how are you getting your referrals?
So there's a couple people that have been helping me out. A guy named Pat Carey, who does some criminal defense out here. Sandy Rojas, they're both great lawyers. Sandy Rojas in particular has been really nice. She does family law, so there's a little bit of a crossover there with criminal. So she's been great. And then aside from that, it's just been, one person in particular told me, your best clients, you guys probably know this, come from other lawyers. I think I've heard you say that before. So just keep networking, keep in touch with people, and eventually your reputation will get there, and eventually get to the point where you're comfortable and you've got a rhythm, and you go from there.
Yeah, and I've never, Siannah gets more cases than most people I know from your networks, right?
Yeah.
So just describe for our listeners how you leverage your relationships, even at the DA's office and other places to.
Yeah, I think I've always just kept in touch with the clerks, right? The court reporters. I got a case from a clerk the other day whose daughter was in a car accident, and I didn't work with him for the last 10 years, but he remembered me. Now I think besides the DA's office, it goes on to my kid. My kid's in school now, so she's in soccer and gymnastics. I'm on the PTA, so now they're like, "Oh, you're a lawyer."
Yeah, even and I wear this LA lawyer hat. It's because Sienna's a big Dodger fan.
Yep. Even though he's a Pirates fan, he respects that.
I got the Pirates tattoo up for summer, but this is obviously you have a hat like this too, but it's obviously a trademark infringement. I mean, it has to be. I didn't make it. Somebody sent it to me, but
I know you got me that one and the pink one.
The one that says mistrial is another good one.
Yeah, that's cute. I think I get a lot of deals done at Dodger games.
I know you do.
I met mediators there and defense attorneys. I've gotten people jobs there. I enjoy going to Dodger games, but I also find that other people are less, intimidated or willing to talk about stuff there. So I'm going to a Yankees Angels game with our buddy Bremer.
Oh, nice. Yeah, and I think that's what Siannah does best is put yourself out there and network. The more they see you and know what you do, and you're available to do that trial, to come in and swing, the more that's top of mind, the more times you're. But
not the creepy networking where you're stalking. It's just what I mean. We've talked about this. Where some people are just,
what's creepy?
No, just
talking
let's dive into that a little bit.
Is this really creepy?
And
if we whisper?
Just you're really trying to I'm sure you get it because you're a celebrity in the legal field and people are just trying to constantly hang out with, but it's just, oh my God, you're so amazing, but there's nothing of substance to talk sometimes.
Yeah, and I think your network, don't always be asking, hey, when do you have any cases? It's just be interesting about their life and just be a friend. It's all networking.
And they'll remember, oh, you had this case, or you did this, or you're from Nashville, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So, what is your number one advice? I think, Siannah, if you had a checklist, just for let's go with lawyers first, both of you. If you're in law school, what's the best way for them to get access to trials?
I think you answered it.
Yeah, clerk at the DA's office. I think in particular, But
how do they set up that?
Externships, right?
Yeah, externships. You can always talk. What's the name? The Career Services Office or whatever.
Probably that sounds good.
Yeah,
something like that. But I think the good thing is I don't know. Maybe they might have it. I don't know if certified law clerks or the public defender's office are allowed to do trials or not. I'm not sure.
I know the DA's office you can.
They're able to do prelims or something. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, but you can actually do a trial as a certified law clerk for the DA's office, and you can do preliminary hearings. So you can get a lot of good experience with public speaking and thinking on your feet and get an idea of what it's like. You'll be able to tell if you like it or not.
Yeah, and if you're a law student listening, you can be a certified law clerk in criminal or civil as long as you have a supervising lawyer sign off on it.
Yep.
We've had lawyers in law school try cases at our firm. As long as they're supervised, you can be certified. So it's a very good angle to get your looks in.
I was kind of in the minority. I didn't really do anything for the DA's office before because in my head I was going to be a sports agent.
Oh, and I didn't know that about you.
I worked with Lee Steinberg and Warren Moon and went to Super Bowl and got to hang out with Ben Roethlisberger and all these people, and I loved it. But I realized as a young woman back then, obviously a long time ago, athletes would not take me seriously as a lawyer. And it was kind of disappointing. So it wasn't until my last semester in law school that I did do a mock trial, and I loved the adrenaline rush of cross-examining and doing all this stuff. And that's when I applied, but I had no criminal experience. I was one of the few DA hires that had no experience.
Wow.
But my interview with Mr. Cooley, who I didn't know, now we're actually colleagues and close friends and family. But before, we spent 20 minutes talking about USC football. And I walked out of my interview. I'm I bombed it. I didn't.
Do you think they hire personalities?
Oh, he later told me he did, But I was like, the fact that I just talked football for 20 minutes and then walked out, I was like, oh shit, I didn't really see
Do you think
anything.
you being fluent in Spanish helps as well, or helped?
Oh yeah. I used to get through my calendar in El Monte by like noon, and the judge couldn't figure out why when I got there. We were done by noon. It's because I saved the interpreter a lot of time by going over the forms together and like.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then going back to the AJ thing, I don't know if you saw maybe a month or two ago, Jalen Hurts got that huge deal with quarterback for the Eagles.
All female team.
All female team.
Oh,
His agent all the way
Girls
down.
rock, yeah.
Awesome. I mean, great deal for him, and I like him a lot. And I hate the Eagles, but I like that guy. They were good when they were the Steagles, when the Steelers and Eagles combined forces during World War II. That's the only time they were good.
I've never heard that story.
Neither
Well,
have
you
I.
just heard it here live,
right.
so it's
Steagles.
education. The Steagles. How about you, RJ? Any? What's your best tip for folks? Well, you gave yours. You're just going to the career office, right, to get in there. And then was there a fight though once you get in there to like get good cases to try? Does that exist in the criminal world?
I would say that if you happen to know a DA, you want to link up with them. If not, you can reach out to me. I can put you in touch with one. If you want to get a good assignment where it's the likelihood of you getting a trial is high, and there's certain assignments that are busier than others. So that'd be my suggestion. You can certainly, and in our office, if you do well enough one semester, you can then clerk for major crimes. So
Wow.
And they'll let law clerks call witnesses and stuff. So you could have like some crazy media case where a law clerk is doing a direct exam on a witness or something like that, or handling some aspect of the case. So
John Loomy let them do that because that's how Pat Carey got a lot
that's
of his
right.
cases,
Yeah.
And how about Sienna? How is jury selection different, criminal versus civil?
Yeah, I still haven't figured out the answer to this question, but like in criminal, who picks a jury? Who starts doing voir dire first?
The defense.
Right. In civil, for whatever reason, even though we both have the burden, it's the plaintiff. And I kind of liked having to go second because I feel like they kind of fumble through it and then you get up there. But now I embrace the fact that I know, I do my shtick with Blaze and Lexi and talk about the Panama and the tamales. But even though I got accused of stealing someone's voir dire when it was really my voir dire, but okay.
Yes, people are always, who cares?
They heard my presentation and they were going to use it. Didn't know that I was the attorney that did the presentation. They were going to literally copy my voir dire.
That's funny.
You have a dog named Blaze and Lexi, and you're from Panama?
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I was a potential juror on a criminal case. And,
Oh, which courthouse?
Inglewood. I was telling, as soon as I told Sienna where she knew the judge, the clerk, obviously. But I didn't even get to ask a question. I was so excited. But the prosecutor was up there doing the cherry pie analogy. I mean, it was all like boilerplate, read out of a book, and didn't ask a juror a single question. Show of hands. Let me give you this hypothetical, this hypothetical. I'm like, Jesus Christ, they know nothing about this people.
We've talked about the importance of being kind of authentic in trial and coming up. Like I have you have your Blaze and Lexi thing. I got this from Dave Zuckelbaum
Ziggy!
16 years ago, which is, I don't, when when you're sick when you're a kid, if you stay home 10 o'clock every morning, Price is Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think most people know that. So you start off your jury selection by saying, anyone here seen The Price is Right? Who knows what the reaction is at the beginning of the show when people's name gets called and juror number 6, they'll start, their hands are waving, they're hugging strangers and all that. And you say, well, it's safe to say no one had that reaction when you got your juror summons in the mail. Everyone laughs. And then so it's because Price is Right is near and dear to me. It's kind of an analogy that I like. And we've kind of talked about.
I love Bob Barker. Yeah, I went to go see him. Actually,
Did you see the documentary about the contestant that went like every single day for like 5 years?
No.
Oh, it's fascinating. He got on and he knew like every game and how to win every game because he watched it so often. He knew the price of every item. It was crazy. So he would be sitting in the crowd and he'd be telling the contestants the answer.
Oh, that's interesting.
Stalker much?
Yeah, and then he got on the show and like he had the punch game. That's the only game he got to do. And
that's one just random, right? Basically,
it's random.
Yeah.
But he did the math and he was like, "Oh, I know there's only like a 5% chance I could do better than this $100, so I stopped." Like that
That's
kind
funny.
of stuff. Yeah.
My dream when I was a kid was to, if you ask me what I want to do when I grow up, I want to go on The Price is Right and win a car. I think that was pretty much the dream. Yeah.
I would always take they always had like all the trips. I always like the cars too.
My sister got a car.
Really?
I actually dropped her off. I said, "Don't call me to pick you up unless you win a car," and she did.
Oh shit. That's awesome.
One of my friends, I grew up in Pittsburgh. One of my friends' moms got on The Price is Right, and she came back. She won the Showcase Showdown. She had the dining room set, which she kept. She got 2 jet skis, which she put on the front lawn and sold. Something else. Yeah, jet skis. What was the other? Whatever. But that's just people that won The Price is Right. Jeez. What great marketing, by the way, like for products. All right. Speaking of marketing, last thing for Sienna, what's your number one tip for lawyers trying to generate new business pound the pavement?
Generate new business. I think, like you alluded to it earlier as well, it's like going to these networking events because although we're all plaintiffs lawyers, we all have different specialties.
Yeah.
Like I know that, you guys work up cases or your firm does, but then we could work on it on the back end together. And you've always said that try to be general counsel for anyone, right?
Correct.
So your gardener, like I was getting my bathroom remodels and I was helping the guy that was working on it with a legal issue. So now I'm basically his attorney. I bought a couch at Crate and Barrel the other day. The lady called me last night for a power of attorney issue. So now whenever anything comes up, I'm their go-to person. So just being nice to people and, let them know what you do. And even if it's not your area of law, you can always get referral fees by sending it to other people. So that's a passive income.
And that's what, this hat I always wear that says LA lawyer on it. When I travel, I always wear this hat. And without fail, someone always comes to me and says, "Oh, you a lawyer in LA?" Always. So there's it works its way out sometimes. How about you, RJ? What's your advice for getting cases?
In your 1 month.
My 1 month. Well, like I said, Sandy Rojas, who, by the way, quick shout out, family law. She does a fantastic job. I think getting to know other lawyers who can have spillover cases, what I've heard so far, other lawyers in the area, in an adjacent area to your area of law, seems like the best way to go. So,
I know this in our practice when we do catastrophic injury PI cases. We have clients that get DUIs. We have clients that need to have their felonies reduced. That's a big one. Expunge. That's a big one for us. And then like that, kind of like almost like contingency, getting your fees paid from the criminal side, because a lot of times our clients are on meth and have issues. So
I was a meth queen. I had like 3 cases of meth clients.
Really?
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about it later.
Wow. Well, if you have any meth cases, send them to Siannah Collado. She's the meth master.
Boris calls me the meth queen. I don't know if I like that.
I don't think you should like that. Maybe math queen would be cool, but meth, not a pretty drug. You guys see a lot of meth wave stuff when you were the DAs, or that did not hit yet?
Well, I think I'd say 9 times out of 10, if you see a stabbing, meth related. Yeah.
Meth relating stabbing.
Yeah, that's a safe bet.
Yeah, and Siannah, you also, I think your skill set you up very well because you do thinking on your feet. I think these cases that you do, like the bullying cases where you have a lot of lay witnesses that you can just line them up.
That's how I got the principal. I think my thing is calling the defense like their main person up front. Like that usually kind of throws the case off of them.
Yeah, so I think that's thinking on your feet's good for the transition for sure. But if you're finding your skill set like Sienna's, if we're going after bullies. So
don't like them on the playground, don't like them in the courtroom, and the insurance company or the gang members. So just whatever the bully.
So Siannah, how do people get a hold of you?
sclawco.com is my website. Siannah, sclawco.com. I have Instagram, Facebook. Shoot me an email. I'm pretty accessible.
Sweet. RJ, how about you, bro?
It's a Dreiling Law, APC. That's D like David, REILI, N like Nancy, G. This is how my mom says it. Law, APC.com. I'm on Yelp. I'm on LinkedIn, Avo, and all that stuff. So.
And are you on OnlyFans?
I haven't got to that point yet, although I'm not sure what I would sell.
Maybe you have nice ankles.
I don't know.
Hey, we were talking about meth a second ago. And it took a turn. Get the fuck out of here. All right. If you have any questions, go to justicesteamnetwork.com. Click on that button. If you have a criminal question, if you have a bullying case, just hit it. We'll fill it out. We'll send it to the specialist. They'll get back to you. Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Episode of the Justice Team Podcast. Thank you.